This is The Real Deal, where real estate meets real life. Whether you're a seasoned real estate expert, a first-time home buyer, or if you're simply passionate about hearing small business stories, this is the podcast for you. Join us as we dive deep into the world of real estate and beyond.
Our sponsor today is Yvette Meyer with Old Republic Home Warranty. Reach out to Yvette for all your home warranty needs, whether you're buying a brand new home or a resale home. Getting a home warranty will ensure that your home is protected. Welcome to episode 59 of The Real Deal, where real estate meets real life. I'm your host, Janine Igliane, with my guest host, not really guest host, my official co-host, Ryan Hatcher.
What's up, guys?
And our guest today is Steve Chater. And when I tell you guys that I'm so excited for this conversation, we were talking before and I kept having to say, we need to save this for the podcast. This is going to be a really good episode for anybody out there that is looking at overall wealth building and really what does that look like? What are my options? But also kind of what we were talking about earlier, Steve, is just like the mindset around it, which I think is a big deal. So Steve, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. Glad to.
Yeah. So this will be fun. So Steve, I personally, one of the things I love about our podcast is I love getting to hear people's stories. So I want to know just who is Steve? Where did you grow up? Where did you come from? And how did you get to be where you are today?
You know, can I start with something different?
Sure.
And I'm happy to do that. One of the things that I've found as I've taught around the country about wealth building was that wealth building doesn't resonate with a lot of people.
Oh.
Because mentally they see wealth as being Bill Gates and Elon Musk and something that they can't achieve. And
I would also add that some may think that it's not good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Okay. And so there's a mantra at Keller Williams that money is good for the good that money can do, right?
Amen.
So it depends on how you use it.
Yeah.
So in any event, I would shift it to financial security, financial independence, and then go to financial abundance.
Oh, I love that.
And so that's what people, I believe mentally are looking for is financial security, financial independence.
Yes.
And many people can't relate to that concept of wealth building because they think of it wrong.
I love that.
Okay,
right. You guys, listening,
Gem,
right?
We're
already gem number one. Okay, Steve.
Okay.
Love it.
All right. So the question was, I was born and then what?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, so I grew up in upstate New York and in apple orchard country, so we're recording this in the fall, right?
Yeah.
And this is the perfect weather for the changing leaves and picking apples and all of that.
Yes.
And that was one of my first jobs. My first job was paper route. Second job was picking apples.
Nice.
So
those are fun outdoorsy jobs.
Yeah, right. That's right.
When did how old were you when you did those jobs?
Oh gosh, I think I started, 12.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I actually started before that because my first entrepreneurial job was I rode my bicycle to school and people weren't worried about all the stuff about people leaving campus and stuff. So I would ride my bike down to Dunkin' Donuts and I would buy a dozen donuts and I'd come back. And if I bought them for $0.25, I'd sell them for $1 and people would be.
Much.
And so then I was coming back with 2, then 6, and then the administration said, you can't do this anymore.
I love that. That is the heart of an entrepreneur, look at the kids that are doing those kinds of things, selling candy and all of that. And you got yourself a little entrepreneur there.
Right.
The other thing too, I think is interesting is, I heard a stat recently that the age of kids getting their first job is getting older and older and older. I was 14 when I had my first job. And it's just interesting. So that's why I asked how old you were.
Right. Well, and it's going to get older still if they keep raising the minimum wage for McDonald's workers.
True.
Right?
Because they'll just automate it and throw an AI computer, which they've done so much of already.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And then it just reduces the number of opportunities for kids to get a job. So anyway, grew up in New York, moved to Arizona when I was 24, 25, I think. I came here to go to ASU. I had worked in the transportation industry for years, and I thought, as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I didn't go to college right out after high school. And so as I was thinking about what do I want to do, I was at UPS and I was making good money, but the guys in the suits were making more money than me. So I started looking and saying, so I got a 2-year degree in transportation and distribution management. My mother and father-in-law came back from a 4-month trip around the United States, and they came.
That's nice.
Yeah, right. And they came back and said, "Man, we really liked Arizona. And if we move to Arizona, will you go too?" And I said, "Sure." There was 3 schools that I knew that had a 4-year degree, and one was ASU. The other 2 were Niagara College and Syracuse, where it stayed in New York. But so I said, "Sure, I'll go to."
Okay.
So anyway, got here and found out that I really liked Arizona, but there wasn't very many jobs in transportation. And we're talking now 1976.
Okay.
Okay. And so I was talking about it outside at the apartment complex at the pool, and this guy said, "You should get in real estate." And I said, "Really? What do you have to do?" So I went and I got my real estate license. I sold a house my second day. I sold another house the next week.
Wow.
This was so fun.
Wow.
And
that's rare, folks, for the listeners out there. Most people don't get their real estate license and have that kind of success.
That's because they don't talk to people about real estate.
Real estate is a business of people. And so it's just a matter of talking to enough people. Yes, I love that.
Absolutely.
How'd you close one in 2 days?
No, I sold one in 2
Okay.
days, but I didn't close it.
Gotcha.
Okay. And no, there's a lady at the pool. And she goes, "Oh, you're a realtor?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "I want to buy a house." And great, I'll help you. I didn't know what I was doing.
Nice.
Right. So found her house.
Talk to people and tell them you're a realtor.
Yes.
Simple.
Well,
Okay.
you know that I don't know what the number is anymore, but years ago they used to talk about the fact that real estate agents ranked down below used car salesmen as far as people's perception of what they do. And so then people are afraid to say, "Well, I sell real estate."
Yep.
Right?
I've heard that.
And honestly, it's a profession. Sure. And so, yeah, we don't sell real estate. We lead people through a process where they achieve their goals, and the product is real estate.
Love that.
And so you can't sell somebody something they don't want.
100%.
I learned that I was working at Zales in a mall, and I watched one of the salespeople, and I wasn't allowed to sell diamonds. I did engraving and sold watches and that kind of stuff. But I watched the assistant manager go through explaining all of the benefits of cut and clarity and all of that, and bore people to death.
Yep.
And then they would go to another jeweler in the mall and buy a ring.
Yep.
And
why do you think that is?
Because he wasn't interested in what they wanted or what they needed or what they were looking for. It wasn't about their goals. It was about, he was interested to tell them everything he knew.
Yes. 100%. I think sometimes, and I've shared this with my team, we talk too much and we actually talk our clients out of the sale. We need to listen, right? We need to guide. And if we're truly there, to your point earlier, not to make a sale, but to best help our clients, then that goal will be accomplished into what serves them, not about you.
We've seen inspectors do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. So, but our role as the fiduciary in real estate is to make sure that they have all the information they need so that they can make an intelligent decision. They're emotionally attached to "I want," okay? Are all the factors that we bring to the table, does that affect their decision? We might say, "No, you shouldn't buy this house."
Right.
Right? You got to replace the carpets and the cabinets and yes, and people are replacing carpets and cabinets all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, that's our job, is to make sure that they have all the information they need to make an intelligent decision.
Yeah.
We never make it for them.
100%. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you learned, so you saw that, and then what?
Well, so I got my real estate license and just never looked back. I was helping people achieve their goals, their dreams. They wanted to buy a house. And so I was able to help them do what they wanted to do. But I didn't know anybody. I was from New York, and I didn't have any sphere of influence here. And so, but I saw what was happening in Arizona. So we're growing like crazy. And remember that that Williams Air Force Base was out here to the east, and it was way out to the east where you drove through farmers' fields in order to get out there. But the instructor pilots were coming here using their VA loan to buy properties, and they knew they wanted to come back. And so we saw, and that's number one. Number two, they were using FHA and VA loans, which were fully assumable at the time. So then I saw people coming and going, you're getting transferred to Germany? All right, well then I'll give you $5,000 more for the house. And we're seeing house prices go up because investors were giving them money in order to assume their loans.
Interesting. And when was this? What year?
77, 78, 79. And so, now, I'm coming from upstate New York, where population is declining, taxation is causing people to move out. Property values nobody talked about property values going up in New York, and there wasn't any significant changes going on in upstate New York. So that was my frame of reference, and now I'm seeing something completely different happening out here. I called my dad, I called my grandfather, I called my friends, and they all started investing in properties here if I would manage them for them.
Okay.
So I said yes.
I love that.
I helped them get into properties. I partnered with my dad on one property, and then my grandfather, he was buying CDs, and at the time the interest rates on a CD was 5%. And and I knew I could make 15% because I had a broker who was teaching me about money and return on investment. And so I was in that conversation. So I said to my grandfather, I'll give you 9%.
Nice.
Instead of 5%. And we'll secure it against a piece of property. So now he took his money, and this is the beginning of the story of multi-generational wealth, where grandpa is helping me, my dad is investing with me in order to take advantage of opportunities that are coming up. And so can we really quick, Steve, I just want to pause. I want to hear more of your story. I want to pause there for a second. And you just said multi-generational wealth and wealth helping the younger generation build wealth. Right. We had talked about this prior to starting the podcast, but I would love it if you would share your perspective on that with our audience. In terms of, go ahead.
Independence versus interdependence.
Well, not that, more of what is we talked about the book Die with Zero versus helping our kids and our grandkids. What is your perspective?
So my perspective is that we're all given, God has created each one of us with different gifts and different abilities. And some people have an entrepreneurial gift and they have the ability to grow and create a business. And if they're successful in the business, that usually means they have money. Right? Because the business is successful for them. Other people have gifts of engineering or whatever it happens to be, and so if a person is an engineer and they're getting a significant salary because they're adding value to a company like Intel, for example, then that significant salary is, what do you do with the money? If you're an entrepreneur, what do you do with the money? And how do you successfully steward the money? Die with Zero is an idea that says, I've created X, and so now what I'm going to do is spend it all down, and I'm going to enjoy it. Or it could be, I'm going to give it all away. Warren Buffett's given away most of his billions. So I'm not against that. What I'm for is building multi-generational wealth. So in Proverbs, in the Bible, there's the man with all the wisdom in the Old Testament was Solomon. And one of the Proverbs says that a good man provides an inheritance for his children's children. And of course, it was an agrarian society back then, and it was acquire land and grow crops and all of that. We don't have that now. What we have now is we have a money system. And so if you have the ability to make money, then I believe that you'll also have the responsibility to steward the money that you make to benefit others.
I love that.
And I'm talking about generosity and giving.
Yes.
And I'm also talking about, in my mind, it's helping my children create multi-generational wealth at the same time I'm doing the same thing, because none of my children are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Okay, they have good jobs, they have a great family, all of that kind of stuff, and their life is fine, but they're not entrepreneurs. So they don't know how to think entrepreneurially unless they're taught.
Yes.
And so now it becomes part of a family conversation of how do we create multi-generational wealth so that the grandkids are okay and the next generation is okay.
I love that.
And that's just part of what I'm trying to create.
And you're doing that.
How do they receive that conversation?
They receive it okay. I guess one of the questions is how quickly do they receive it? Right?
Or how do they implement it?
You know, we go through these different stages in life where you have their responsibilities, and I think in pictures. So I see an umbrella, and the umbrella is the circumstances, and we're under the circumstances of whatever it is or whatever stage we are in life. So if you're in college, the circumstances are I paid money in order to be able to get a degree, so I'm going to be doing everything I need to do in order to get my degree, and I paid money to make this happen. Then you get married, and then you have children. You're under the circumstances of, I'm a parent now.
You got to provide.
And so now my job is to create a high-functioning adult. And so what do I do with that? And so so many times what happens is under the circumstance, your focus is on all of the things that need to happen, and sometimes not under the big, or not the big picture. Okay, so I'm answering your question by saying,
right.
I'm no longer under those circumstances. I see things differently, but they are. And so it's a perpetual conversation.
I think what an opportunity for our kids and grandkids to tap into wisdom of their grandparents. And when I hear you speak, Steve, there's so much of just like wisdom that you're just spewing that I don't even know if people would appreciate, right? But the opportunity to sit and listen and to hear that, and then to have you share it and pour that out and pour that into them is a gift to them.
I think that, thank you. And I think that if we look at all of the other cultures throughout society, the wisdom came from the older generation.
Always.
Right? And so it's lived experiences, and people lived together. You know, Ryan and I were talking before we got started here about Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and how he identified in that book the maturity continuum. Okay, so 2 really important words, maturity and continuum. And so we start out being dependent in that continuum, and that's the, think of a kid, right? Totally dependent on the parents for everything. Then it's the job of the parents to raise them along that continuum to become independent, which means I no longer need to be taken care of by mom and dad.
Yes.
Okay, but the highest form of maturity is interdependence.
Ooh. Explain.
And so now what happens is, so for example, let's say you have kids and you want to go out. And so who would you rather have babysit? A teenager that you don't know, or grandma and grandpa?
Yeah, grandma and grandpa.
Okay.
Always.
So, and if grandma and grandpa are there and willing to babysit, then it makes your life better because you've got that freedom. It makes their life better because they're developing relationship with kids that they love, and that interdependence. I'm locking my fingers together because independence is like this and interdependence looks like this. So
I love that.
That's kind of an example. Yeah. So so our society and our culture celebrates independence. And it's the interdependence that you find, okay,
Yeah.
life is a lot better.
I agree. I don't think our society today and our culture today values that. And in fact, I think, so much so that our people in their whatever age you want to put on it, think that the ultimate goal is to retire. But it's a shame in that that's when they have the most wisdom that actually needs to be shared with the world, right? That they could pass on. So,
you ever seen the show Blue Bloods? Mm-mm. So it's a show about a family that's in the police force, basically in New York, and one of them is the commissioner, who's Tom Selleck. And every Sunday, the end of the show always ends with them having Sunday dinner, and there's 4 generations sitting at the table.
I love that.
Every show ends like that. It's
I
pretty
love
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't see that very often.
No.
So when we talk about maturity and continuum, then what's happening is our society is not celebrating, in my opinion, the highest level of maturity.
Yeah.
What's celebrated is that independent level that I can do, be all you can be, and all of that individual. When Covey wrote the book, what he did do is he went and he said, where are the people that are being highly effective in life?
Yeah.
He didn't talk about who's making the most money.
Right.
Mother Teresa was one of the people that he looked at. And he said, what is it about these people that have caused them to be effective?
Yeah.
And he recognized this maturity continuum, because Mother Teresa couldn't do what she did without other people interacting and supporting and helping her make that happen.
I love that.
Okay. And so if we look at it down into the family unit, now if you have more, you can give outside of that, but looking at the family unit, creating intergenerational and multi-generational wealth is something that I can do because I make more than I need to live.
Yeah.
And so now what do I do with the excess?
That's wealth.
And that's something that didn't just happen. You were intentional with it. So I want to go back to your story, because we talked about this, that it hasn't always been easy and there's been some struggles in there. So take us back to, you're selling real estate, doing great things, and then what?
Property management too, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, so my goal was, because getting into real estate, I realized I had unlimited potential.
Yes, which is the benefit of being in real estate, is there's no ceiling on what we can do and what we can earn. I love that.
But my thought process was I needed to respond to everything. So I was 24/7 and literally 24/7. I'd be out of the house before 7 o'clock, and many times I didn't get home until 1 a.m. And so I was working hard. It was personally gratifying because I'm helping lots of people and doing, and so I had excess money and I was investing, and then I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 35. Now, millionaire is what I thought my freedom number was. Okay. And so if I have $1 million, and you have to remember, this is back in 1980, $1 million was
a good year,
money.
by the way.
I was gonna say that might be like 10 million today. I don't know.
Yeah, right. So I had, my broker said to me, you want to be a millionaire? He said, go into $1 million in debt, but have somebody else pay for it.
Okay.
So I had started, I was buying land, I was buying commercial properties, I was buying single family residences, all of this kind of stuff. And then in 1985 and 86, it was interesting. George Bush ran for presidency and said, read my lips, no new taxes. In 1986, they created one of the largest tax increases in the United States. And this is the first time they did it retroactively. And it killed the savings and loans business, which was where we got all of our funding here. It killed the real estate business. It killed the oil business, because all of the business practices that were set up based on the tax laws and one incentives all went away. Okay. So bottom line is I lost everything.
Yep.
And so having been through that, it's like, well, I want to make sure that never happens again. So what do I do next?
Yep.
And so I went back, and one of the things that I learned was it's not just about what my net worth is. It's not just about what the equity is I have is. It's what is the cash flow that's being created by that net worth? And so it just became obvious to me that while I wanted to become a millionaire and you would do it on paper if you're having somebody else pay it off for you, the thing is that there were no, and by the way, the tax laws incented that negative cash flow. And in 1986, Congress changed the rules and said, you know what, you make two kinds of income now, active and passive. And that wasn't true. You just made income before. Okay, so now you can't write off passive losses against your active income more than $25,000. So Congress changed tax laws, and what I realized was you need to pay attention to what they're doing, because what they're telling us was, it's interesting, the things never changed. The rich need to pay their fair share.
Yeah.
That's what the politicians were telling us back in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And
I've heard that before.
right. And we need to close the tax loopholes for the rich. And that's what the politicians were telling us. And then what they did was they bankrupted everybody.
Yeah.
And then almost everybody. And then there's people like Robert Kiyosaki who happened to be able to raise funds during that time and became a millionaire because they hired people right out of college to manage all these assets that the government took back because they said the private enterprise was mishandling their funds. Well, the only reason they mishandled the funds, or could be called that, was because Congress changed the rules of the game. They were not mishandling the funds prior to that. So anyway, once you start realizing that and you say, okay, there's a game being played here, and I realized at that point in time that I need to make sure that I protect myself from my government, because the government is not out there trying to help me by hurting the rich or doing any of that kind of stuff. They're just looking to amass the power.
Is there anything that we need to be on the lookout for today as it relates to that?
The rich need to pay their fair share.
So I just saw a
Hasn't
stat.
changed.
I saw a stat about that the other day. They said if you add all of the billionaires in the world, all of their wealth together, it would basically cover our nation's expenses for 9 months.
Right.
So that's
If it took everything.
It's not going to last very long.
Yeah.
See, the other thing I experienced was the Beatles were making all kinds of money, and they actually wrote a song called "The Tax Man."
Oh.
And one of the lines in the song was, are you aware of what a penny loafer is?
Yes.
Okay. And they said that the tax man's even going to tax the pennies in your shoe.
Oh, wow.
Right?
You need that song to cut that into the podcast.
Yeah. Right? And it's part of the reason why John Lennon moved to New York.
Oh, interesting.
Right? So it was taxation that caused, so the wealthy can move where they need to move.
Right, of course.
And the issue is that they're already paying, the top 1% are paying 40-some% of all the money anyway.
Yep.
So it's like that saying from NBC, the more you know.
Yes.
Yep. The star.
Yeah. So if we're not paying attention, I've heard the term before, low information voters. Okay. We have a lot of low information voters that don't understand. And so a slogan will sway the vote. Oh. Yeah. So I think that's what we need. We need to make sure that we understand, as we're starting to study money, if we're trying to create financial security, then there's models to follow to create financial security, to create financial independence, and ultimately create wealth. Okay, if there's a model to follow, do you know what it is?
Right.
Do you know how to follow it? Do you know what it is? Because the idea of Robin Hood taking money from the rich and giving it to the poor has never worked.
Has never worked. I just want to say a couple of things. So, and we, again, talked about this earlier.
Sorry, I just get off on tangents.
I love it. No, it's so good.
Fantastic.
I think I was sharing with you, in full disclosure, I feel like I have a lot of stories built up in my head around money that prevent me or bring me fear or whatever from moving forward or taking that leap of faith or that next step or whatever. So one of the things that I've done to help me overcome that is get myself in the right room and around the right people, and make sure that I'm open to that. Because to your point, there's other people that have gone and done it well, which is why you're here, Steve, because you're one of those people. And what have you done, and what are the steps that I can copy, right? Who cares? And say, okay, this is what this person's done. I'm going to do the same thing. But to my point about kind of the stories that we build around, I think it comes back to our childhood, how we were raised, and we build these stories around. But one thing I want to say is you have to, number one, be aware that you're building a story. Okay. You have to be aware of it. You got to break through that. And to quote the Bible, it's not money which is so often misquoted. They'll say money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money. Right. And so don't fall in love with it, but use it for what it can do, for the good that it can do. Right. One of the things that I'm really proud about that we've done personally, but also professionally in our business, is we have been super blessed to do a great deal of business. And because of that, we're super generous. So we're very involved in our community. We love to give back. And I love that because of what I've been blessed with, I'm able to go out and now be a blessing to someone else. And I think that's a really big key too.
Sure. It is. In fact, there's a phrase about that called giver's gain, right? And it comes from that biblical idea that it's more blessed to give than receive.
100%.
Right? But even if you're not looking at biblical wisdom and you're just looking at conventional wisdom, there's that understanding of giver's gain. But the mindset that we tend to have because of what's happened in our past is a mindset of scarcity that says, if I give it away, I won't get it back, or I need this to be comfortable, or I'm afraid that if I, whatever that is. And that fear causes us to to sometimes be irrationally cautious. We wouldn't ever say that we're afraid.
Right.
We're going to be cautious.
Right.
There's a really interesting book that I read once called The Millionaire Blueprint. And he said, in a 10-minute conversation, I can tell you what your financial future is going to be. Because everybody, all of us, have a blueprint, a relationship with money that stems from how we were raised, the things we learned in school, the things we learned at church or whatever. Yep. And it inhibits us from being able to make some of those decisions to really build wealth.
Right. 100%. Have you ever played the game Cash Flow? Yeah. Robert Kiyosaki's game Cash Flow.
It's awesome. We need to play this.
Have you played it?
No, I need
it's
to play this.
We need to get it for our families. We need to play it with our kids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So 100%.
And the whole goal is to get out of the rat race.
Yes. And then it's how. And one of the things that happens is there are different ways to get out. Yeah. So it's like, well, what did you learn? And the rat race is in that game. It means that you now make passively at least $1 more than what your expenses are to live.
So now you don't have to work for money.
And then once you get out of the rat race, then what? So that game reveals how you think about money. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So we're going to play it at the office.
I know. I want to come. I couldn't come the last time, but I need to come.
You play at the office?
Yeah, they did it. They already did it before. So, Steve, you just shared with us, you lost it all.
Yeah.
Was that the only time?
No. Well, that's the only time I lost everything. I was literally down and almost lost my house. I was 3 months payment down on my house. And so lost all of the investment. I was all set up to be a millionaire by I was 35 because, buying all the assets and stuff.
A cash millionaire?
No.
Assets?
No, assets. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the value of the assets. Okay. And so that's where Congress changed the tax laws and everything shifted. And then we had to figure out how to rebuild. And then I didn't lose everything, but in 2008, I was expanding my business, and so I had a Keller Williams office up in Show. I had a Keller Williams office in Gold Canyon. I bought a building to house the Keller Williams office in Gold Canyon, and then the market shifted. And the title companies and the mortgage companies and all the people that said, we're here to help you, said, sorry, we're not going to come. And so...
Or they went out of business.
They didn't go out of business, but they were smart enough to cut their expenses, which I'm one of the expenses because they were going to rent from me. And so I had over $1.5 million in that and wound up selling it for $225,000.
Yeah.
So, but the good thing is I wasn't all in for everything that way, right? So gotta rebuild. But the point is, and we talked about this before, it's like if you live to avoid failure,
yes,
you will avoid growth.
Yes.
If you say, I'm willing to fail and learn, then it's, what did I learn from the failure? Okay, let me do something different. And so that's the difference between my 1986 to 88 to my 2006 to 2008.
Yeah, I love that. And I said this to you, and I probably said this before, that I think that's one of the things that's helped me in business is not being afraid to fail. Being okay with, I'm going to try this and see if it works. And if it doesn't, I'll learn from it and move on to the next thing.
That's a mindset, right?
It is a mindset. Yeah. And so many people operate and don't do things out of fear. And that holds them back, right? So I think, again, recognize that that's maybe a limiting belief that you have and embrace that failure. Specifically,
when you come to money, then the issue of whatever it was that we're currently programmed, I don't know who made this statement, but we talked about it before. It's like, it's not what you know that'll hurt you, it's what you think is true that isn't, or however that is.
Yes.
And so it's important to change how we think about things because whatever our paradigm is, we call it PTFAR, right? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So your paradigm or your perspective on things affect your thoughts.
Yep.
Your thoughts affect your feelings. Your feelings will determine the actions that you take or not take, and your actions will determine your results. So the thing is, challenging your paradigm on how's it working for me? Okay, so if you believe money's the root of all evil, you're going to avoid, oh, no, I would never want to be rich. Right. No, that's not good. We would never want to do that.
You never will be.
Right. And you'll look at others and you'll judge them because their values are not the same as yours. And
we don't see that at all in today's society.
I heard it growing up all around me.
Yeah. So, I had generosity because my dad was a dentist. And so he was able to make the money that we needed as a family, 5 kids and all of that. My mom didn't work. And we made sacrifices because my dad was extremely generous. So General Electric was the major employer in Schenectady, New York, where I grew up. And General Electric, they had a strike. And because of the strike, General Electric moved their operations to South Korea. And the economy in Schenectady went down. But my dad still did dentistry on his people, even though he couldn't pay. And he gave away 20% of what he made. So we didn't have a color TV when my friends did. We didn't have 2 cars when my friends did. But I watched, and we were always okay.
Can we talk about that for a minute? I think that is, I think about who's listening to this podcast, okay? My 19-year-old daughter said she listens to all of our podcasts, so I hope you're listening at least to this one.
Better be.
But what would be a lesson for her in that? I think, what would be a lesson for her in that, what you just shared?
Well, so we're talking mindset, right? And so there's the mindset of scarcity. I don't have enough. I want to have more. And so I'm going to hoard what I have. Or there's the mindset of abundance, which means that there's more out there and I can participate in more. The scarcity versus abundance.
I also think, if I may add, Steve, delayed gratification.
Oh, well, yeah. So, yeah.
Right. In that your dad sacrificed. You didn't have the latest and greatest color TV.
Right.
And you were okay. But it allowed for all these other things.
Right.
I think so much.
Well, it was his concept of abundance. So he didn't stop at a 10% tithe. Okay. So that would be the prescriptive. He was 20%. And so his abundant mindset was, I can afford to work for these people and give them free services, so I'm going to do it. And I'm going to give money over here because I can afford to do it. And he was intentional about generosity because he was grateful for what he had. Does that make sense?
I love it. And there has to be a wealth principle around that.
Well, and it's the mindset that I got from him with regard to generosity. Now, when I got to Arizona, my wife and I, we had $100 in our pocket. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and $1.65 an hour was the prevailing wage. Mm-hmm. And so it was real easy for us to get into a scarcity mindset. Mm-hmm. Because my first job was $1.65. Hers was $1.10 with tips. But she's at the Ramada in the morning and nobody was tipping. Oh. Okay, so anyway, it was real easy to get into that scarcity mindset. Yeah. So I would remember the paradigm affects your thoughts. Yes. I would suggest that we challenge our paradigm to say, am I in scarcity or am I in abundance? And what does that thinking look like? And there's only 4 things you can do with the money. You can give it away, you can spend it, you can invest it, forget the 4th. Save it. Yeah. And so now, are you intentional about giving it away? Because if you're in an abundance mindset, I don't care how little you're making. Are you giving some of it away? Are you developing habits and skills to be able to live off of whatever it is that you're creating and then say, how can I learn to create more? But I'm going to be giving, because if I don't feel like I can give, I'm living in a scarcity mindset, and that'll affect everything.
I love that. Okay, Steve, I want to talk about, you're an author, you're writing a new book. I want to talk about that. But before we do, I want to talk about what are some overall because today your life is what I would aspire to be when I'm your age. Just a few short years now. What are some of those guiding principles, investment strategies, things like that you've adapted in your life that have allowed you to be so generous and to also be at a place where your passive income is paying for your life, and you're also able to be so generous and help your kids, but also your grandkids. So what are some of those things?
Wow.
I know, in our short amount of time.
Yeah. Okay. It's the environment that you choose to create around you. So your future is determined by what you choose to entertain yourself with, the things that you're learning, and the people that you associate with.
I love it. So get in the right rooms, talk to the right people.
Yeah. Well, so my story is I worked for 20 years at a real estate company here that was a 100% company. And what that means for anybody not in real estate is you get to keep 100% of whatever you make. And that was specifically at a time where most real estate agents were on a 50-50 split with their broker. And then if they did a lot, they went 60-40, 70-30, whatever. So I'm at this 100% company, and I'm successful. I'm one of the top 5 real estate salespeople in the Phoenix area, and I was presented with an opportunity to make a change, and that change was Keller Williams. And what motivated me to make the change was Keller Williams was willing to share the profits of the company with me. And I knew that creating passive income and that profit sharing was valuable. And literally I said to myself, well, not just myself, the people that was presenting it to me, this was in September of 1997, and I said, if that company is who they say they are, every top producing agent in the country should want to be there. Why? Because we create enough business, and if they're willing to share profits with us, that's an additional form of passive income that's coming in, and that's why I joined. I walked out of the meeting with 100% buyer's remorse. And I said, what did I just do? What did I just say? And it was my business partner that says, no, we have to do this. We have to stop acting like a mom and pop organization, and we need to do this. So it was the encouragement of somebody else to get me into a different environment, because I'm like, oh, I'm comfortable where I am. Oh, I'm at the top of the industry. Why would I? And all of that. So then the next thing that happened was they had a thing called Mega Camp. Okay. And I had just been to what was called Star Power, and it was like, these are all the top people across the country all coming together. And I'd just been through that in San Francisco, and then we're supposed to go to Mega Camp. And I said, I'm too busy. I can't do this. I can't go. And it was the other guy who I was in business with that says, you have to go. I've already paid your tuition. It was $75.
I love it.
Okay.
So Mega Camp, for those that don't know, is the Keller Williams conference where all the top dogs, top agents, the mega agents are on stage teaching what they do.
Right. And so there was only 40 of us in that room, and at that time, and so going and being forced by somebody else to get me outside of my head because I'm thinking, I'm too busy, I can't, I don't have time. And by the way, I'm already successful, so I'm limiting my thinking with that. And it was somebody else who said, no, you got to go.
Yeah.
Changed my world. So the three things is, what do you choose to entertain yourself? Mm-hmm. What books do you read? What movies do you watch? What shows do you fill your head with? That's one. What are the people that you associate with? Yes. And are they encouraging you to move forward? Or are they going to clap their hands because of where you are? Or do they want to pull you back because your success makes them uncomfortable? Mm-hmm. Intentionality.
Yes. Huge. I want to talk about, I just want to kind of recap a couple of things that I heard you say, just because I think it's so good to reiterate. You talked about living generously.
Intentionally generous.
Intentionally. Okay. I love that. Intentionally generous. You also talked about getting uncomfortable, right? Comfort can sometimes be the enemy.
Right.
Right. So get uncomfortable. And then challenge your limited thinking. And I think you have to do that intentionally.
Yes.
You have to ask yourself, where am I limiting myself?
You know what? So I'm going to agree with you, but I want to expand on it. Your limiting thinking are your beliefs because you believe them. Mm. You can't do it by yourself.
Yep.
You either need to, whatever your issue is, if you don't have somebody else coaching, counseling, consulting with you, willing to tell you the truth that you're not seeing, you're not going to change it because you believe it to be true already.
Yeah. Super random side note. I was talking to a teacher yesterday, and she was telling me that she had her students do self-evaluations. And a couple of the students said things like, I'm a leader. And she challenged them and she said, no, you're not. And I was like, you told them that? Mm-hmm. And she said, no, I did, because they need to hear the truth. Right. This is what a leader looks like. Awesome. And afterwards I thought, I love that you did that. Mm-hmm. So having people that will speak truth to you can be really valuable.
Right. And you have to look for it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
So that's back to who you surround yourself with.
Absolutely. And so that could be your sphere of influence, the people that you hang out with, or it could be intentionally getting a coach or a counselor or a consultant to help you think differently about. So one of the things that I put together in my business, because I had my real estate team, I had real estate investing, I had my real estate company and a property management company, and so coincidentally, my insurance agent said, so who's your board of directors, Steve? Mm-hmm. He said, you should be meeting, and your CPA should know your financial guy and should know the people that are helping you. And so we created my board of directors, and we'd have quarterly meetings where I'd share, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, and they got to challenge it.
When I heard that for the first time, that was like an aha for me, because I'd never heard that before.
We don't think we're big enough.
100%.
Oh, limiting beliefs.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Changed everything. Well, no, it added to everything. I shouldn't say it changed everything, because they were able to challenge what my assumption was, and they weren't always right, but they were able to challenge. And so if you don't have somebody challenging you and saying, where are you going? What is your vision? How are you going to get there? What's the strategy?
Yeah.
What are you implementing?
One of the things that I'm pushing up against, and I know you're good at, is tracking. You track. So you look at your numbers, you know your net worth, you know what's coming in, what's going out. How has just doing that activity changed things for you?
Well, so the word is awareness. And if you're not aware, right? So there's, Ernest Hemingway wrote this book called Sun Also Rises, and there's this scene in the book where he's sitting in a bar talking to this guy, and the guy said, how did you go bankrupt? And the answer was gradually, then suddenly.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so the issue is, going back to leadership, are you a leader? Leaders track trends. And there's no such thing as a flat trend.
Yes.
Okay, it's either growing or it's declining or decaying. And so leaders track the trend of where things are going. The relationship, what's the trend of the relationship I'm having with this person, or money, or my business, or whatever the goals are that you've set for yourself. It's like, are you making this happen?
I love that. There's so much. I feel like we need to do a part 2, Steve, because I feel like I barely scratched the surface with you. What didn't we ask you that we should have asked you?
Well,
and then tell us about the book you've written and what you're working on.
Well, we started talking about at the very beginning wealth, and I challenged you to say, not because it's wrong. It's not wrong to talk about wealth, but people's mindset or perception of wealth is, many cases, something unattainable, when financial security is what they're trying to attain. And by the way, we call that retirement.
I love that.
Right? And so we started out talking about that. And there's really this bigger picture of how do you think about everything that's in your life. Who were you created to be? What were you created to do? Are you created to be more? Are you created to be static? Or, once you get your job, then you're over and done? Or like my mom used to say, I raised you 5 kids. I'm not raising those grandkids. Right? So I think that, so the book that I wrote was an answer to a couple of other books. So I was part of a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And we talked about models before. And being in a mastermind group where we're having conversation about wealth building, the premise of the group was, are you making more money than your parents did? And the answer for all of us was yes. And so then the question was, so who taught you what to do with money? Are you dealing with your parents' education and input, or is there something more? So we spent about 18 months working on that, but then our actual conversation, when we were kind of off subject or off topic, was, tell me about your business. Are you doing this in your business? I'm doing, and so Gary Keller was leading the group, and he said, he stood up in front of us and he said, you guys don't know squat about business. You're just good at what you do.
Ain't that the truth in so many cases?
So he changed the whole mastermind. And so for the next, I don't know how many quarters, maybe a year, 2 years, we came and he created a study group out of us on what we're doing. And then he sent his course writers out to interview the 52 people that were making more than $1 million in gross commission income back in 1997. And so 98, 99. And so that became the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. And what he did was he said, success leaves clues. There's models that they're following in order to be successful. What are they? And here's number 1, how you need to think. Then number 2, the models that you follow in order to be successful. And then at the back of the book are role models.
And that's why that book is often referred to as the Bible of real estate.
Yes, exactly.
And
very little's changed.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. Would you say that book is still relevant today?
100%. The only difference is where you generate leads.
I agree.
And so, but in the back of the book was, try to make this story short, was a lady that the average size of a database was about 2,000 people for anybody making more than $1 million. And they had databases, which most people didn't.
Yes.
Right? And so that was the average size of a database. But there was a lady that made $4 million that year, and her database only had 400 people, not 2,000.
Wow.
How did she make 4 times as much money?
She went deep.
She helped people buy investment properties that had positive cash flow. And so Gary Keller and Dave Jenks looked at that and said, here's the outlier here. She's doing better than anybody else. And so they wrote another book called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. Brought us into a room. There's 200 or 300 of us, all these different ways of investing in real estate. And he wrote the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. The next book that came out was Flip. And Flip was a book that was really not about, it was about a business of flipping houses, not creating wealth. And so what you'll notice is Gary didn't put his name on it. He wrote the foreword to it, but he didn't put his name on it because he was looking at, how your business build your wealth and that kind of thing. And so then our book, Hold, was our example of what we did, number one. Number two, it was the safe and secure way to build wealth using real estate. So what is it? So for example, I already told you, I lost everything by creating negative cash flow. Because when the market went down, my business couldn't support the negative cash flow, right? So that was... So Hold was the story that people could grab onto and say, yeah, this is what I want to do this. And for real estate agents, our intention was give it to your clients.
Yes.
Have them read it. Say, do you want to do this?
Yes.
So I'm writing another book, but it's different.
Yes.
And I'm actually not writing it myself. I'm getting help in writing the book. But it's about life and the bigger purpose of life. And so, do we have time to talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay, so Eleanor Roosevelt has a quote which just totally resonated with me, going back to the people you surround yourself with and the conversations you're having with people. And that quote is, great minds talk about ideas.
Love this.
Great minds talk about ideas. Average minds talk about events. The market, the weather, the politics, did you see what happened with the house burned down the street? Average minds talk about events. Small minds talk about people. Okay. So what are the ideas that would be talked about in what arena? I think I told you I used to be in politics. So the ideas we're actually going through, I believe culturally, we're going through a conflict of ideas between what our founding fathers put in place and what Karl Marx advocated for. And so at very different levels, those two ideas are clashing in our, and we're wondering why we're in a divided society.
Well, someone said this to me, not to go political, but between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, we've never had candidates so far opposed to each other. Like they are the farthest apart that you could possibly be. You know what, that's a value judgment and I wouldn't argue against it, but I think Barack Obama running in his was the same and certainly Ronald Reagan running against, but you're not old enough to remember that. So, hey, I love Reagan.
but we have gone through this clash of ideas. So what are the ideas that get talked about when we're talking about life, not politics? And so I've come to understand these for myself. And the first idea came from a guy named Brian Buffini. And Brian Buffini says, you know what, there's 5 areas of life or 5 circles in life. And it's like synthesize all your life down to the smallest thing you can talk about. Well, the first one is spiritual. The second one is personal. The third one is family. The fourth one is financial. And the fifth one, he said, is business. I say is community, because not everybody has a business. So, but those are the 5 areas of life. Is that idea true? If it is it 100% true? And if it is, then what do I do that life has those 5 areas? What should my life look like? And now, the subtitle of my book is called Leading a Life Well Lived, and it's about leadership. So then
I'm excited for that.
It goes deeper than that. So what we're putting together is a fictional story, but the fictional story is the introduction to the conversation on what do I do? What do you do? What's the model that we follow to create our life well lived, because we were created differently.
Yes.
Right?
Agree.
With different gifts, different talents, different personalities.
Yes. And God uses all of it.
So,
for purpose.
Susan Scott wrote a book called Fierce Conversations. And one of the things that she said in that book was, and most people think Fierce Conversations is like this. It's not. And one of the things she said was what gets talked about in an organization, and how it gets talked about will determine what gets done. Okay? So think of a marriage, think of a parent-child relationship, think of a business, a real estate team, anything. What gets talked about and how it gets talked about will determine what gets done. So the intentionality of what the conversation looks like in a relationship is huge.
Yeah.
So if life includes those 5 areas, I'll just go real quickly. Spiritual, personal, family, financial, and community. Community includes business. Then what would the perfect life be? And my presupposition is that it would be abundance spiritually. It would be abundance personally. It'd be abundance in the family and financially and in the community. So what does abundance look like for you?
Yes.
Okay. Well, abundance then requires intentional growth. So let's go back to what we talked about. What are you entertaining yourself with?
Yes.
Who are you hanging out with? Right? What are the conversations that you're having and the ideas that you're promoting inside of, just like your 19-year-old daughter, right? Instant gratification, scarcity, and abundance. It's like, okay, how's that work out? Instant gratification puts people in enormous debt because they're not paying attention to the trajectory of the money that they have.
Right.
Right? And so intentional growth, where do we grow? Well, who are you created to be? And that we can get deeper into all of that. But I believe that if you have certain gifts, talents, and abilities, that's where you should grow because you were created to be good with those things.
Yes.
Like the parable of the talents.
Say that again. Oh, yeah, exactly. And then, of course, the most important thing is that is the relationship. So your relationship to your creator, your relationship to yourself, your relationship to money, which you were talking about that, your relationship with the family members, your relationships in the communities. Ultimately, that's what's most important. You ever read the book Tuesday with Maurice?
No.
With Maury, not Maurice, with Tuesday with Maury.
Okay.
Okay. It's about this guy and the conversations that he had on Tuesday with this man that he garnered all this wisdom from.
I love it.
Life's wisdom.
Steve, this has been so good. Like so good. Can we plan for like a part 2?
Yeah. What if I don't know anything else?
I don't know about that. I don't know because I have so many more questions. We just, in the interest of time, we love ending with like a little speed round. Are you up for a quick rapid fire speed round question? Okay. We'll start easy. What's your favorite food?
Asian
food. Okay. Like orange chicken. What are we talking about? What kind of Asian? Vietnamese?
Sushi. Yes.
Okay. Okay. All of the above.
Ramen
I love
Chinese
it. Okay.
Okay.
Favorite drink?
Alcoholic or non-alcoholic?
You pick.
Beer and iced tea.
Oh, okay. Do you have a favorite sound?
Oh, music.
Ooh. That makes sense.
And I would say that my favorite in music is in a minor key.
Okay. Love that. All right. I want to know, what's your favorite investment?
My favorite investment is, it sounds trite, but investment in myself.
Oh, no,
Okay.
Nothing better.
No, it's learning about what I don't know, because if you don't know what you don't know, right? Number one. Number two, you have to challenge what you think is true but may not be true.
Do you ever arrive? Is there a point in which you say, I'm good?
No. You know what? That's the danger point.
Yeah.
I work for a guy. Oh, this is lightning round.
No, you're good. Favorite book?
My favorite book is mine.
Oh, love it.
It's called Hold.
Yes.
And I'll tell you the reason it's my favorite, because I know it's lightning round.
No, you're good.
But I was teaching it up in Salt Lake City, and this lady came up to me and she said, my husband and I want to live in Germany part of the year and in Salt Lake the rest. And we've got 16 properties already. And we read your book and we know how we're going to get the other 4, because when we've got 20, we're able to go to Germany. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Reading the book gave them the
amazing.
idea on how do they achieve what they want in life. That was so gratifying.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite podcast?
Yes, Hugh Hewitt.
Oh, okay. Love you. And then last but not least, I know you like to travel. Do you have a favorite vacation?
Caribbean.
Oh, why?
Been to Jamaica 3 or 4 times. And it is so cool to see the people doing the most menial tasks in landscaping and cleaning the pool, singing reggae music.
I love it.
It's like and by the way, not everybody in Jamaica is that way.
Yeah.
But only people with that kind of an attitude get to work in those resorts.
I love that.
And so you just see how attitude impacts opportunity.
Huge. This was so fun. I really appreciate you taking the time and just
My pleasure.
sharing all of this. And I would say to anybody listening, stay tuned, because I'm going to get this guy back for round 2. Thank you for watching. And if you like this episode, please like and subscribe. And I would love to hear if you would write a comment and just tell us what stood out to you that you heard today that you're going to go and implement. So thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to The Real Deal, where real estate meets real life. Make sure to follow or subscribe to the Home Selling Team on YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify to stay up to date with our podcast.